Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Backstage Bimbo TV. My name is Allison Rouse, your most notorious groupie, and author of We've Got Tonight, The Life and Times of Notorious Groupie, me. Hope everybody's doing great. Welcome back to our midweek episode of Rocky Talkies. I think that's what I'm going to call this instead of the midweek bonus episode. We'll just call this the Rocky Talkies. So, today on the Rocky Talkie, we're going to talk about something that I've really been avoiding, but I do think it's very necessary to talk about this because I hate talking about it. I feel like I'm always on the defensive because of it. I feel like I always have to just fight tooth and nail for myself because it's only me. We're going to talk about the road to my book, from the beginning concept to now, to today. Because I think it's important that people understand this, especially the haters. Because you're going to find out what kind of hypocrite bitches you really are. Okay? And for today's cocktail, because I chose the Gin Ricky because of F. Scott Fitzgerald. Not because I think I'm a great writer. Not at all. I know I'm an author, and I know the difference between being a writer and an author. Some other people should learn that too, because they're not great writers either. None of us are. Groupies. We know how to be creative, yes. But Gin Ricky was what F. Scott Fitzgerald drank. It was of their time. But I chose this because F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote about the decadence and the partying and the crazy and the celebrity and the fame and the rich, everything of his time that I'm writing about. So I chose to do a Gin Ricky. Now I'm using one of our locals right here, Desolation, a pre-mixed one. I'm not the biggest gin fan, so we're gonna see how this is. I'm definitely a fan of all of the locals that we have, in case you haven't noticed. So everybody, grab your Rickies, kick up your heels. Let's have a Rocky Talkie, shall we? Cheers, big ears. Actually very good. So delicious. I love our locals. Here in Salt Lake City, guys, if you ever come, you've got to hit me up. I'll just take you to all the cool brew houses and distilleries and stuff we have in town, because we actually have a pretty crazy brew scene here. Very highly decorated brew scene and distillery scene. So, all right. Now let's talk about this. The reason I kind of really avoid the full story is because I have to talk about when I first released the book, and it was the worst 2 years of my life. Absolutely most horrific, disgusting. I don't want that kind of horrific, negative, selfish, kind of small town bullshit around me ever again. And like I said, it was the worst 2 years of my life. So let's just kind of get started. When I decided to write the book, it wasn't until, I think this has been almost a 16-year journey for me, from beginning to end. Now, when I decided to write the book, it was years after John died. And my main concern about writing this book was simply to set the record straight, because I was still do get dragged around in tabloids or all kinds of different publications. I am the novelty in the greatest rock and roll death. To most people who just talk about that night, that don't know who I am or anything like that, I'm just a novelty to them. And because I'm not a human being to them, it gave them carte blanche to kind of say what they wanted. And I got so sick and tired of going to my lawyer, and I still have to go to my lawyer regularly because of this, to send out cease and desist, being called horrible, slanderous, untrue things like hooker, prostitute, murderer, druggie, all that. So I wrote this book to mostly set the record straight, to tell my story, that I wasn't just some girl that happened upon this rock star and got lucky for the night. I was a calculated 17-year into my groupie life, very well-known rock chick. So I wrote this book to set the record straight. That was it. That's all I wanted to do. And back then, there was not Amazon. You didn't self-publish, and it was a very tedious and trying means to get your book published, or just to even find an agent to shop to the publishing houses, because you had to have an agent back then to shop to the big publishing houses like Random House or God, there's so many presses, Penguin Press or anything like that. Any of the big Crown Press, any of these big publishing houses, you had to have an agent. And when you're shopping an agent, they really only like it because they all know each other, apparently, because I did a lot of research. My mother's cousin's wife, I know it sounds really weird, she's been in publishing for Condé Nast magazines for a lot of years. So Elaine kind of gave me advice and stuff. So when you're shopping agents, you shop about 2 or 3 agents. You will send out a query letter via email to these agents, 2 or 3 of them. Wait 2 or 3 months. If you don't hear anything back, wash, rinse, repeat. Same thing over and over and over. So I found a really amazing agent with a top agency out of New York. We shopped the book for a while. I had amazing book deals. Like, I really did have some incredible book deals. And it's the same thing for the agent. When they are shopping your book, 2 or 3 queries, wait, repeat the process over and over and over, because 99% of the time, you don't even get a response back. So you're just sort of left hanging for a few months waiting. Like I said, it's a very long, tedious process. I mean, it took me a year just to find one agent that would talk to me, and then to keep going to find the other agent, another agent, and another agent, and then get to my agent that I stuck with, stuck with at the time. But I did not like when the publishing houses are coming to you, they also tell you how they kind of want to approach the book, how they want to market it. And you know how I feel. My story is not Almost Famous. My story is not the same as the 70s girls or anything. Every groupie story is different, and I wanted to stay true to my voice. So I walked away from some really amazing offers to do this on my own. I walked away from an amazing agent to do this on my own. Like I said, Amazon was just, while I was going through this process, and keep in mind, that was like 3 or 4 years. And I was actually working full-time jobs at the time while trying to write this book. Working a full-time job, I was an area manager for a loan company. So I worked 6 days a week doing that. I worked for the DABC, Department of Alcohol Beverage Control here in Salt Lake City. Kind of became the unofficial beer queen of Salt Lake for the liquor stores. Stuff like that. So I was working full-time, shopping agents, writing this book, going through the motions, trying not to spend my stripper savings, trying to keep true to myself. So when I walked away, like I said, Amazon was just barely starting out. They were not the biggest publishers in the world like they are now. They didn't have the same type of street cred or reputation or reach or sharing their libraries with Walmart and Barnes and Noble and all the other. This didn't exist. It was still such a very obscure place to publish. So working, writing on the book on my days off, on nights that I got, on vacations, whatever, I was writing. So years later, end of 2013, or was it 2014? No, end of 2013. Facebook is happening. I'm close to the end finally. I decided to quit my job for a while and just focus on writing the book. So I did that because I was in a position that I could do that. And was working on it full time. Got a private message on Facebook one day from my childhood sweetheart, a boy that I used to make out with and see in the small town that I grew up in. I grew up in a town of about 500 people. So we reconnect. We find we're still attracted to each other. There's still chemistry like there was back in the day. He comes out here, blah, blah, blah. Long story. I go out there for New Year's Eve. By February, he had rented the moving truck. I had given notice, and I moved out back to Missouri, to the small shit meth head college town called Springfield. Disgusting, horrible place where in the center of town is a high security prison. Like, this is the heart of the town. This is the energy that beats through this town, this prison, where John Gotti, the Colorado shooter, all the biggest names, the underwear bomber, the shoe bomber, whatever, all those people have been out. The guy who shot John Lennon was there. This is one of the highest security prisons in the United States. So this is kind of the energy. It's one of the biggest. In small towns, we all know how it goes. You're bigger whores, cheaters, liars, pieces of shit than any city dweller any day. So, and he knew about all this. I told him, this is my life. This is the book. This is my past. If you can't handle it, don't handle me. I'm upfront with every guy, every normal guy that I date. I'm totally upfront. Rockstar, roadie, normal guy, business owner, pro snowboarder, actor, whoever I'm dating. When they ask me what I do for a living, I have to tell them. And my past has to come flooding out. So he was well aware. I was going to be releasing the book close to Valentine's Day that year in 2014. Moved in with him a week before I released the book. His poor little steroid pumping ego, among other things, couldn't handle it because he was cheating with 23 other women this whole time. There was a total of 23 women. More than any other musician. More dishonor, disrespect, and lies than any musician I've ever known. So this is the energy that I'm releasing my book into. The day I released it, he was like, yay. Like, he was really supportive and everything before I released the book. And this is why I hate talking about it. This is the worst 2.5 years of my life. The most deplorable people I've ever known in my life. Ever. And the day I pulled out of that driveway, I haven't looked back, and I don't want to look back, and even talking about it disturbs me. So, for 2 years, he cheated, lied. Every one of his side horse, he bragged to that I was his famous girlfriend and all this stuff, Yeah, he liked to treat me as an object as long as it made his ego satisfied, just like all those other 23 fat bitches you met on fuckmywife.com. So, every one of these girls, the majority of these girls, went onto my Amazon book page. I never said a word to these ladies. I had nothing to say to them. I wouldn't let them in my life, but I was a part of his life, and he was letting them in his life. So he would brag about me. They would go on my Amazon book page and call me a used up piece of pussy. They would leave these horrible reviews, which was really just personal slams, because as I've said before, you don't have to buy any book or read the book for free to leave a book for any review, a review for any book on Amazon. You don't have to. You just have to spend $50 somewhere on Amazon. And they say it's because on Kindle and stuff you get free reads. I get paid for those free reads. I get paid a whopping 50 cents for every 100 pages you read. So they do keep track. They know who's reading. So they can verify that this person read the book, and it can say verified read or verified purchase like the real people do. So they would go on and leave used up piece of pussy, you're getting what you deserve, bitch, you're a joke, you're horrible. So I instantly became ashamed of myself in the book, and I felt so horrible, like I shouldn't be doing anything. I turned down some big interviews, a lot of big offers that could have really propelled my book. And keep in mind, I'm doing this by myself. I've paid people to edit my book. One of my so-called friends, another friend of me, took the book and was like, I'll edit it for you, because her dad has magazines and stuff, and she used to edit her dad's magazines. Well, I pulled the book back off sale for a while and told people not to buy it, because she's like, oh, I'll have it done in a month. Well, 6 months later, still no. Well, if I was getting paid, well, I didn't ask you to do it, bitch, so give me back the copy. Just stop. So, when this book was released, I was fucked over by a couple editors that I paid to edit it. I was fucked over by my friend. I was fucked over by the man who I was living with. and planning to spend my life with, and made to feel so embarrassed, horrible, disgusted with my book, with myself, with my life, everything, that I just gave up. I didn't put the book as a priority in my life. I was abusively conditioned to be ashamed of the book, and conditioned to make something else my priority when I was not even on their priority list, even though I was living with him. So I go through this living hell for 2 years, because there's a lot more to that situation of abuse and stuff, to the point where it destroyed my book. These women and him destroyed my book. His presence in my life destroyed my first couple years of the book, which should have been amazing, which should have been normal. Like I said, I was getting interview offers and everything that I was turning down, and I was ignoring because I didn't want to upset my relationship any more than it already was. But I was not the one upsetting the situation. I was faithful and loyal to a cruel man, and like I said, abusively conditioned into thinking me and my book were pieces of shit. So he destroyed my life, almost cost me my life. The day I pulled out of there, I did not look back, but I came back. I went to LA for a while, hung out with one of my musician friends so I could recover and be reminded who I was as a woman, as a person, with the strength, with the beauty that the rockers had given me my whole life. And that was about 2016. Stayed there for a while. My mom had previously been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So like I said, my life had been destroyed financially, mentally, emotionally, physically, in every way, shape, and possible. So I had to start over. And by starting over, I had to get a normal job, and that's when I went to work for the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control in Salt Lake City. I ended up coming back to Salt Lake City because my mother had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I wanted to make sure that I spent the last years of her life near her and being able to see her, whether or not she knew me. So, once again, the book got put on the back burner because I had to start my life over again. And when you self-publish on Amazon, like I said, you're not doing it because it's lucrative. You're doing it because I wanted to stay true to my voice. I wanted to tell my story and not have other people gloss over it or put rose-colored glasses on it, or tell lies. I didn't want that. I just wanted, or to take credit for the other people's adventures, like some other groupies have in other books. So I wanted to tell my own story from my own perspective, leave doors open for the other girls in my book to tell their own stories instead of me taking away the opportunity. This book is something that's going to give them more opportunities because I've already been out there. I was already a scandalous part of rock and roll history, Las Vegas history, and the Who's history for years by the time I decided to write this book, and for 12 years when I released it. So I had already had, a leg to stand on as far as having a name publicly before this book. So that's why, one of the reasons I knew I could release this book. So came back to Salt Lake City, went to work for the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control, got involved with ordering a lot of the beers. There's no privately owned liquor stores in the state of Utah. They're all state owned because I live in a totalitarian state called Utah and the Mormons. So I worked for the state of Utah. It wasn't just some crazy, stupid, you work in a liquor store. No, honey, I worked for the state of fucking Utah. Shit pay, killer insurance, better than anybody else could ever have. So, again, and with my mom being sick, book went on to the back burner again. And I keep in mind, I don't have a lot of day-to-day personal support from my immediate family or friends or anything telling me that I'm doing a great job, that You know what? Well done you. You wrote a book, you released it, and everything you've been through. I don't have that. So keep in mind, I'm doing this whole time, trying to sell my book, trying to market my book and advertise my book and support what I need to with my book. But again, having to put it on the back burner and giving it such a minuscule attention that of course the sales are going to suffer. Of course being out there to a lot of people is going to suffer, because I was suffering. I was also having to recover from being mentally and emotionally abused and not having support all the time most of these years. I do a lot for my family now over the past year or so, but through the majority of this, no, it was just my mom. And then after a while, my mom couldn't tell me that, how's the book coming? Well done, I'm glad you released it. Or, somebody tell me, I'm so sorry you got a bad review. There's none of that. I do this 100% solely alone. I've never asked anybody I know for help, and I know a lot of people in the entertainment business. And I have family and, third cousin in the publishing business that I'm close with. She's much older. But so, fast forward to 2019, October, my mom passed away. Her mother was still alive. A month after my mother passed away. And I had talked to my grandmother after my mother passed away, and she had asked me about my book a couple times previously. Well, your cousins say you have this book, what's it about? And I was very vague, because you don't want to tell your grandparents, hi, I'm a slutty groupie and a stripper. I come from a very specific old school social society. So it's not exactly what you tell my grandparents. But I also come from a grandfather who played professional football, wrote 3 books and self-published 3 books of his own, was president of an international mining company. Him and my grandmother were very wealthy gypsies and basically moved to 29 different homes, which she decorated beautifully. So I come from, these are my grandparents on my mother's side. I come from very adventurous, and in this conversation, within this month after my mother died, my grandmother asked me about it again. She's like, well, why are you not pursuing it full time? So, well, Grandma, I've been led to believe that I should be ashamed of my book, that I'm a joke, and that I'm just going to be a failure. And I'm so hard on myself, because nobody is harder on themselves than they are. I don't care what my haters say. You don't scare me, because I'm already hard on myself. You don't say anything that I haven't already struggled with myself, so fuck you. And when my grandma told me, she's like, well, you should pursue it full time, Allison. She's like, you have never been meant to be someone to live a normal life. You never have. And she's like, I know more about you than you think. And she's like, I just want you to know that no matter what, I support you. And I think you should do your book full time. And that was the last time I talked to my grandmother, because my mother passed away October 29th. My grandmother turned 100 November 24th and passed away December 10th. So, because I do have a comfortable situation that I was able to walk away from my job, I was going to leave my job in February of 2020. Because I will admit, I did also inherit something. So, again, I was in an even more comfortable position. Fortunately, I'm very blessed to be in that position. I was going to leave my job with the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control in 2020, but then the pandemic happened. At the time, liquor stores and grocery stores were the only things really keeping this economy going in this country. So they convinced me to stay a little longer, just till the pandemic is over. Hardest year I've ever had to work. Because when you're working in that type of industry and you're in a pandemic, all of a sudden the liquor stores became where everybody started to socialize here in Salt Lake, and especially where I worked, because like I said, I was the beer queen. The brew houses were still going, so I was dealing with all, getting new beers in and stuff. And again, putting the book on the back burner because all I really wanted to do was this book. All I really want to do is put this first and see what I can do with it. Because what it comes down to is I do want to sell the rights. I do want this to become bigger because this book is not just about me. So, in February of this year, I left my job. I walked away, took a couple months off to decide to just breathe and really recover from my past decade of my life that had, especially the past 7 years, that had just really destroyed even who I thought I was and the strength I thought I had. So I took a couple months off, started my YouTube channel, and here we are. This is a chance I'm taking to try and make this book something bigger because, again, this book evolves. What I want with this book has evolved with everything I've been through. Like I said, I originally wrote this book just to tell my story straight, to get the story straight, to stop the bullshit, the lies, the tabloids, the slander. Hey, I wasn't just some girl that was with him that night. Here's the rest of the story. I was 17 years. So that's why I wrote the book, just to set the record straight. But now, with the rights for sale, and what I realized, this book is bigger than me. It's not just about me. I know it's my stories told from my perspective, but that's all I can do, is tell my story from my perspective. I can't tell anybody else's story. But like I said earlier, this book opens doors for the other girls. And if I get the rights sold for a movie or a series for this book, because like I said, this book's not even half the story. Not even half my story. There's other women in this book that have bigger stories than what I write. And even my stories are bigger than this. So this book gets signed, guess what? Those girls get to be their own head writers for their characters. Just like Sex and the City and stuff. It would be something like that. So this would open opportunities for the other girls, give them a position to tell their stories, to write their own books, to do their own interviews. And just like back in the day, like I always say, when we got on the guest list, it was me plus 3. And that's what this fucking book is. Me plus 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. However, many other girls want their doors open to tell their own story, whether they want to be public or stay private. This gives them the opportunity. I go through the living hell for the past 7 years that this has been out, not including the first 8 years. So for the past 15 years, I have done the trials. I have done the footwork. I have done everything by myself. I have been backstabbed, used, destroyed, and fought back every time with this book. And even now I'm struggling because 6 months later, here I am with the YouTube channel, and I'm just starting to get out there, and I only have 200 followers. So it's like, it's even bigger stress to me because I'm trying so hard to get out there, not just for me, not because I needed to be famous. I already was. I was already scandalously infamous. I was already part of rock and roll history, part of the Who's history, and part of Las Vegas history when I wrote this book. I didn't do it for the fame or fortune. I did it because I knew eventually that this would become bigger than me, that it wouldn't be just about me anymore, and it's not. Like I said, I do all the hard work. I go through the living hell that, of bad reviews and hater fans, but I also get the really awesome side to meet the people that have been really supportive, that have bought my book, and I love you guys so much. You've made it worth it. But like I said, I go through the hell. It benefits the other girls. They can skate right in. So there it is. There's the journey to my book and why things are the way they are with my book. We all have a story behind our facades. And that's the story behind my facade. Even though this book isn't even half my story, like I said. And I'm trying to work on book number 2, but working a full-time job, trying to promote this book, trying to focus on getting the rights sold, and not knowing how to. Like, I'm totally winging this by myself. I have never had anybody to help me with promotion, advertising, facade. That's a difference between me and other groupie books. All those other groupie books had a bunch of bullshit PR to help promote them and twist their books around to be prettier than their lives were. Not me. I don't have any PR. I don't have anybody to put rainbows and kittens coming out my ass or anything like that. It's just me. And I'm pretty goddamn proud. And you know what? For all you haters, if I was a friend of yours, you would be so supportive, so amazed at everything I've been through just to get here today, sitting in this chair recording this vlog. But you choose to hate me. Why? Same reason my ex destroyed at the beginning, because his ego is fragile and disgusting and tiny. So there you go. Before you want to criticize that my book is not perfect, no, it's not, and neither am I. And Lord knows the journey to get here to these vlogs today has not been. And if it wasn't for the people I met for this with this book, and for the rockers who have really been supportive about this book, I wouldn't be sitting here, especially without you, Jen. So there you go. All right, guys. There's our midweek Rocky Talkie. I'm so glad to get this out of the way because, like I said, there's certain aspects of my life that I don't even like to talk about that mean so little to my current, and that I just, you know what, we turn our back on stuff, we don't want to look back at it. So that's why I've been kind of avoiding this. I knew I would kind of have to explain myself and why I am the way I am with my book, why I self-published, because like I said, it had nothing to do with no big publishing house wanting my book. Oh yeah, they did. They wanted it more than any other groupie book, and they were going to pay for it, but it's not always about money, is it? Or fame or fortune. It's about staying true to myself, true to my story, and seeing what I can grow, my own business, by myself. So, to all the ladies who have taken the risks that I have, that have been through the living hell, that have lived an unconventional life, or are starting their own YouTube channels, their own businesses, whatever. Here's to you guys, because I know it's not easy, but it's worth every fucking second of it, isn't it? Because the people you meet along the way that are awesome, that believe in you, that support you, that enjoy your hard work, it's worth every penny. So cheers to you guys who have supported me. Cheers to the other ladies in the world who have fought tooth and nail to do your own thing. All right. Cheers, big ears, as I say. So hit the subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bells. Let's get my stories out there. Because those likes, YouTube, they want more of those. All right, folks. See you next week. Thanks for tuning in.